With AI, the doing part of work is rapidly disappearing. So everyone needs to be a leader. In my mind, the future graduate trainee jobs are managing an army of bots, whether it's 2 or 10. How do I coordinate all of that work? How do I pull it back together, make sure it delivers something valuable? How do I storytell, etc. that goes with it? Ended up running Coca-Cola India in a big turnaround. So I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I came back to London to join Google, spent a few years there as ending up as the COO of Google Europe. Almost every technological innovation or breakthrough in society over the last few hundred years, humans have found a new and typically better way to live and work. The issue with the next few years is the changes will happen faster than they've ever happened before by a long way. So when all white collar and blue collar work can theoretically be done by AI, it brings the marginal cost of producing most goods and services down to zero. Think about that. What does that mean for business? What does that mean for jobs?
This week, Ben Legg. Pleasure to have you here.
Good to be here.
So, to begin with, you have quite a fantastic and diverse and interesting background. Can you give us a little insight into your journey?
Sure. So you can think of my background in decades because A, I've got a few, and B, I seem to get bored about once per decade and change industries. So growing up, I wanted to do two things: join the army and be an engineer. And then I discovered there was this path whereby I could, if I joined the army before going to university, I'd get sponsored through university on full pay. So basically went straight from school to Sandhurst for officer training, then joined the Royal Engineers, went through university. I'm a civil engineer, and spent 10 years in the Royal Engineers, traveling around the world, building things and blowing things up in all sorts of interesting places. So that was decade one. Decade two was kind of big business. So I went from the army to McKinsey as a strategy consultant for a few years, officially based in London, in reality all over the world. And then from there to Coca-Cola. Did various sales and marketing jobs in Greece, then Poland, then India. Ended up running Coca-Cola India in a big turnaround. So I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I like turnarounds. I like fast growth. I like crazy risks and change, etc. That was decade two. Decade three was kind of big tech and ad tech. So I came back to London to join Google, spent a few years there as ending up as the COO of Google Europe. And then after that, did a bunch of tech CEO jobs, mostly private equity-backed technology CEO jobs in Amsterdam, Kansas City, Singapore, New York, in that order. So that was decade three. Decade four, which isn't over, I have a portfolio career and focus pretty heavily on the future of work. Now, what that means in practice, so portfolio career just means you make money in multiple ways rather than having just one job. And my portfolio career has three parts. The first is advisory. So I sit on quite a few boards, mentor quite a lot of CEOs, etc. The second is quite geeky. I help Wall Street understand how Silicon Valley makes money. So I keep an eye on what's going on in Silicon Valley and the world of digital advertising and package it up and explain it to Wall Street. And the third is just keynote speaking at conferences, mostly about AI. The parallel part of my work is I co-founded at the beginning of lockdown an organization called the Portfolio Collective, which helps other people have portfolio careers. We have 16,000 members around the world. And I split my life between either having a portfolio career or helping other people have portfolio careers. To round it all out, I have 5 kids. The oldest is 30, the youngest is 5, live in London with a lot of time in New York for a lot of reasons. Used to live there, wife's from New York, and have lots of clients in New York.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like that diversified background was a key distinction in you ending up at Google. Can you share a bit more about
It
that?
was, yeah, it was kind of interesting. So by then, I guess I was at the end of decade 2 of my career, 10 years in the army, a bit of time at McKinsey, some time at Coca-Cola. And there I was running Coca-Cola India. One Sunday, lying by my swimming pool in Delhi, drinking a gin and tonic. It was very much an expat lifestyle. And I got a phone call from Google in London saying, do you want to come and work for Google in London as the COO? At the time, it was of the UK, Benelux and Ireland, so 5 countries. And I said, why are you calling me? I'm selling fizzy drinks in India. It was a bit more than that, but that's what I said. And so they told me the story, and it was really an interesting story that made me very interested. So what happened is there was a new person who was appointed to run the UK, Benelux and Ireland, an American called Dennis Woodside. He was sort of parachuted over from California to run the region. And when he got there, he was pretty unimpressed by what he found. So Google revenue was growing 100% a year. So you might think, well done, everything must be good. But he looked under the hood properly and thought, this product is selling itself. It was the early days of Google search ads. But the average sales pitch was basically a bunch of scruffy people from Google taking a bunch of ad agency people out for lunch, getting them drunk and picking up a check for £1 million. It wasn't, sophisticated stuff. And they'd also been asked to sell or monetize other ad products, and all of them had failed apart from search. So he said, this is really actually not a very competent organization that thinks they're competent because revenue is growing 100% a year. So he saw that, but the problem is Dennis, although he's mega smart and worked out that problem, he'd never really, built an organization or led an organization. His background, he studied law, worked for a Supreme Court judge, did an MBA, worked as a strategy consultant at McKinsey, and then did a strategy job at Google. So he'd never got dirt under his fingernails, as it were. So he just said, fine, I will hire a right-hand person to help me solve this problem, build this organization the right way. So he said, and this is where it's this is why I got the phone call in India. He said, number one, I want someone who is an ex-strategy consultant because Google needs a strategy for how to make money. They didn't have one. Number two, I want an engineer because I want someone to build bridges with the engineers in Mountain View. You can't have non-engineers and engineers. They'll never see eye to eye. Let's have an engineer on the business side of Google. Number three, I need someone who's done senior sales and or marketing roles, because the main thing we had to do in Google Europe was build a professional sales, marketing, partnerships, and customer service organization. And he said, ideally, this person would also be ex-military to kick some butt. In the whole world, they found one person with those four parts of the CV, and hence that phone call on a Sunday. And I thought that sounds kind of intriguing. I'll come in for a chat, and the rest is history, as it were.
So I can see how you have an interesting connection into Silicon Valley, having seen Google from the inside, the tech revolution. See, now we've got the AI revolution. How have you seen the world of technology change, evolve, and from your perspective, what is the AI revolution as it's known today look like?
Wow, that's a really big question. So I think certainly tech's gone from being, if you go back, say, 20 years ago, tech was just an enabler for other businesses. It almost, I wouldn't say it wasn't an industry, but it was very small parts of industry. Now it's driving the world economy. It's almost like almost every company is a tech company with some other stuff on it. So it's gone from being peripheral, almost like your classic IT department of a company. Your job is to make the humans more productive, and then get out of the way while they do their clever stuff. And now technology is, or for a long time, technology has been becoming a bigger and bigger part of the products we sell, the services we offer, etc. But the biggest change with AI is it's now the technology is almost like partnering with humans to run stuff. Whereas before, humans ran stuff, but a lot of what they ran was technology, but humans were in charge of every decision, every work process, etc. And now with AI, almost for every decision, it's like, okay, I've got some stuff to get done. How much do I do? How much do I get AI to do? How much do I get my team to do? And that changes every week, because what AI is capable of changes every week. And therefore, the way we get stuff done changes every week. So I think the biggest change we all need to get our heads around is it's not just humans make decisions and technology is a thing you sell, but technology is a thing that basically it's like human plus AI cooperation is the way to get stuff done. And then thinking through, how do you govern that? How do you think about governance? How do you think about skills that the humans need, but what also the skills that the AI needs? The org chart. I mean, what does an org chart look like in a world where every week, every month, every quarter, the technology capabilities have got so much better that you need a different org? So it's a massive revolution. It really is. I think in the next 3 years, things will change more than they have in the last 10, maybe 20, just because it's changing everything we do. And so, for example, some big things that kind of blow your mind, in my mind, is theoretically AI plus robotics. So when all white collar and blue collar work can theoretically be done by AI, it brings the marginal cost of producing most goods and services down to zero. Think about that. Theoretically, free energy, free food, free services. What does that mean for business? What does that mean for jobs? And I don't want to be sort of, is it nihilistic? Is that the right word? But I don't think ultimately, I believe humans will find a way of adding value and living great lives. But that's a pretty radical change if the marginal cost of producing most things comes close to zero.
Well, it goes back to we had the little pre-chat
Yeah.
beforehand, and thinking of the concept of the current state of how we live, why businesses exist, what they're serving,
Yeah.
what the point is. And if we look at business in a very simplistic term, you provide or you create value, that value is realized, and there's an exchange in return for the value.
Yeah.
And the premise really would consider that that value is based on demand. And we'll move to sales, marketing, and that idea soon. But the very simple premise of, let's say 100 years ago, what the demand was. Well, technology, the Industrial Revolution was underway, and you look at how a human lived. So a very, very simplistic sort of idea. People like to eat what they need to eat. They have their communities, they have their families. They need to pay for it, so they need to work in order to get the value. I suppose that's where the nuance is. If we look at where things are today, but then move that forward 10 years, going back to the point that you're talking about, maybe we'll value different things.
Yeah.
And if we value those different things, then you've got the idea of a race to the bottom for certain types of product or certain types of AI. Even if you look at the idea of things being free, well, maybe they're not actually free, but there is an exchange of value. And I mean, Google advertising was, you get value and you're happy to be served something, and the value is extrapolated through advertising, and that's obviously changed. Expand on that concept or those ideas.
So first of all, the thing about free is it's the cost of producing them, not necessarily what they can sell for. Because one of the things I think companies will need to work out is, well, what can I charge for if the cost of production is zero or close to zero? There will be some costs. What am I charging for? You might be charging for brand. You might be charging for story. You might be charging because although your cost of production is zero, you've built something pretty unique that adds amazing value. You might be charging because it makes people feel better about their lives, helps them have better marriages, better health, whatever. So you're probably charging more for outcomes rather than for cost of production, because in a lot of businesses, you're always thinking, what's my cost of production? What's my sale price? What's my margin? But in theory, if the cost of production is always close to zero, you'll almost always be pricing based on unique value delivered. Now, in terms of what people will value, how they will work, there's a whole load of other things out there. So for example, right now, or at least go back 10 years, a lot of people got a lot of value from their job title and their corner office and their steady career and the brand of their employer. Go fast forward in 10 years time, those kind of jobs will be very few and far between. Most people will work for themselves and have multiple clients at any one time. And in some cases they'll be the leader, in other cases they'll be the doer, but work is being fractionalized. The reality is, if you think, put yourself in the position of an HR leader in an organization and say, well, how many full-time employees do we need? Okay, now think about a full-time role. You need to say, we need someone 48 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, roughly speaking, that's the working thing, for the foreseeable future to justify the headhunter's fee, the induction, the costs, the pension, the stock options, whatever. We need to be confident that that job won't change so significantly in the next year that we don't need a different person. It goes on and on and on, but it's like you end up saying, well, actually, maybe only half the jobs we have now should be full-time, maybe a third. And every year it'll go down a bit. It doesn't mean you don't need humans, but in most cases, you need humans for fractions. You need them for a project. You need them part-time. You need them just as an expert on call. But there'll be all this sort of fractionalization of work that most people won't have one job title for working for one company with one corner office and one company car in the reserved spot. They will basically have a bunch of work. And then you say, well, how do people identify themselves? Because I think ultimately people like to have badges of honor. They like to have status. And I think it's an innate human need. And then it might be through the stuff they do outside of work. It might be through their personal brand. It might be through sort of an achievement or an award that they've won. So I think there'll be all sorts of things that people will have to change how they think about work and what it does for them, for their ego, for their personal story, etc. On top of that, I think, as we know, a lot of people will be, moving beyond the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in an office with a commute, etc., to a mixture of working from home, working from somewhere else, traveling, being a digital nomad. And so I think a lot of people, life design is going to be a massive thing, I think, because if you can work more flexibly, you can also live more flexibly. So I think in some ways, we're moving to a really exciting new place. In some ways, we'll get back a little bit to what we had before the Industrial Revolution. So if you think about before the Industrial Revolution, a typical job involved working in a small firm very close to home with people you liked. Whether you're a baker, a butcher, a farmer, an ironsmith, a carpenter, you pretty much worked in a small community. You probably lived above the workshop or the shop or whatever. And you hung out with a relatively small tribe of people that you liked and trusted. In some ways, we may go back to that, albeit with some technology and global angles to it. But most people will work for themselves. They'll mostly work from home. They'll mostly work with trusted people in interesting configurations. The differences might be those people you work with might not always be your neighbors. They might be in another country, but you've built a relationship with them over time. And given the pace of change in the world, you probably need to evolve that a little faster than you did in the pre-industrial revolution. But I think there are some elements of the way humans are designed to think about work and society and community that we might get a little closer to our natural state. And arguably, one day historians will look back and say, wow, the Industrial Revolution and factories and offices, that was a weird way to work, wasn't it? You're glad that's over.
Well, looking back at the specifics of, if we were to divide up what you value, I mean, as an example in music. So for a while, and it's probably because of low interest rates,
Yep.
most people felt that they were okay because they had access to all the things. And again, an exchange of value, widescreen TVs, and new cars. So for a period, the consequence, if everyone feels actually things are okay and they have access to everything, then the type of music you get is EDM, electronic dance music, typically, because there's no real drive for against adversity. And I've mentioned this in the podcast a few times before. If you had Bob Marley launch and everyone's pretty cool, it's all right, it's not a problem, there wouldn't have been Bob Marley. Music is a reaction to the sentiment of large numbers of people. And the punk music movement, most rock and roll, same sort of thing. Now, what do people today value? We're beginning to see real music, live music, experiential music. So it's about people wanting to go and experience live, whereas they could have accessed the albums or get on Spotify. That's not so much a thing. That's the background to the memory of the experiential thing. The fact those small communities come together and become event driven. So actually the value of music today compared to 5 years ago is probably completely different. In 5 years' time, if we look at the trajectory of where it's going and we look at all other parts of our lives, it's much more statistically probable to be exactly as you're talking about. But if you unpick of what that means, well, how is information of perceived value, attraction, brands, how is that then delivered? Because if the world is fundamentally a little bit different, or quite a bit different, and we're talking pandemic time, pre-pandemic time, the last 5 years have almost been like going back to year zero. The form of communication where the conversation is taking place. And you've mentioned beforehand something to me very interesting about that. Let's infuse the marketing element, the communication element, and what this entire potentially AI driven shift is leading to?
Wow. So another big question. You like your big questions, don't you? So how will AI effectively change the way we think, we interact, etc. And in particular, when it comes to marketing, there's so many things going on in marketing. So marketing for a long time, it's been clear it's been on a trajectory from mass marketing to personalized marketing. So you go back to the pre-internet days. Marketing was simplistically you build a brand and you have TV, outdoor, radio, print, not much more than that. Obviously there's PR on the side. But then as the internet came along, you started having laptops and phones and just more and more digital devices. And even the TV now is a digital device, and everything's a digital device. And with the arrival of big data, you really can theoretically say each person should see a different ad based on, one, deep knowledge about them, and two, deep knowledge about their relationship with the brand. So theoretically, one day in the not too distant future, we will all see a different ad, even if it's from the same brand. Now, it would still need to have the same brand theme. It would still need to have the same story behind it. But the image, the video, the logo, the call to action, the product, the price point, whatever it might be, might well be different. Now, I don't know if that's 3 years out or 10 years out, but we're on a journey in that direction. But it doesn't stop there. So I think before the world of AI, that probably would have been the story I would tell about the evolution of marketing. But still, if you get to that definition I've just given of personalized marketing, it's about the brand saying, I know you, I know my product, I know your relationship with my brand, here's an ad. But the future of marketing becomes two-way because of AI. And it could be chatbots, but all sorts of other stuff. But if you think about what's possible with AI, why just push someone an ad? Why not ask them about themselves? Tell me more about you. And once you tell me more, I'll be able to make better recommendations. And then you end up getting into these really interesting conversations. So, something I mentioned to you earlier, I've over the last few weeks been building a virtual chief of staff called Vector. He has a name, he has a face, he has a job description, all sorts of interesting, routines. I've really trained him up to understand me, my family, my work. And Vector's whole mission is to make me more productive. Now, one of the things I've given Vector, I've got 5 kids, and I've given Vector all my kids' birthdays and said 2 weeks before each of their birthdays, check if I bought a present, and if not, make recommendations. And so it does. It says, hey, it's Henry's birthday soon. Have you got him a present? No. Okay. Here's a few thoughts for you. Do you think that would work? But also asking good questions. Has he picked up any hobbies in the last year that might be interesting? Has he expressed any interest in X, Y, and Z? Can you give me any clues? And it's like a conversation. And then at some stage, I'll end up buying something. Now marketers of old wouldn't have thought about that level of conversation. But then it's like, so what is AI becoming? It's becoming like a great concierge in a hotel when you're trying to pick a restaurant and saying, what kind of food do you like? What's the price point? What's the occasion? And it's almost like whatever we're thinking of spending our time doing or spending our money on, there will be conversations to be had with AI. And then when you think about, so what does this mean for business, for marketers? First of all, it means sales, marketing, customer success teams, and probably influencers are all trying to achieve the same thing. Arguably in the past, marketers primarily tried to tell the brand story and maybe generate some inbound leads, but then sales would close the deal. Customer success would chat to the customer after the sale to help people have a successful experience with the brand, whatever it might be. But now it's like, if you've got a chatbot, that chatbot can go out and chat to people. They can tell the brand story. They can get to know customers. That's market research. They can bring people through the marketing funnel. They can close the deal. They can have a chat after. And you might and then why stop at one chatbot for a brand? Why not have different chatbots with different personalities, different avatars, different tone of voice? Even with personalities where they can change. They can be cheerful one day and grumpy and the next and bossy, or funny. And it's almost like they can adapt their style based on the mood of each individual. So there's kind of no end in sight of what this can do over time. And then we think, as let's say, as a marketer, I talk to a lot of marketers, it's a fascinating function. What's your job? You're kind of like the architect of that. So you'll spend less time making individual creatives. AI can do that. You'll spend less time running ad campaigns. AI can do that. You'll spend less time doing, looking at the analytics. AI can interpret those. but someone's got to design the system end to end. You still got to say, what's the brand? Still say, who are the customers? How will we tell the story? What are the core elements of the brand architecture that still matter? How will we gather data? How will we use it and use it ethically? Yeah, how do we shape the personalities of the avatars that we're going to unleash on our customers? How will we check that the machine doesn't break and get a mind of its own and start saying random stuff? How will, where are our guidelines around, sex and violence and politics and all the other things? It's like there's loads to do, but like a lot of things in AI, there's not much doing. It's nearly all imagining a better way of doing things, designing a better way of doing things, building that better way of doing things, and then fine-tuning and quality control, and a lot less of the doing the work in the middle.
In many ways, it was something we're passionate about, observational and emotional intelligence as a generalized context, which is, well, also use the word generalized, absolutely specific. And the concept that the business as usual, as a human and as collectives of humans, every day we wake up is different.
Yep.
But we get the feeling it's the same as the day before. And then next day we wake up, it's the same as the day before. Unless there's a particular major incident, but the world is constantly evolving and changing.
Big time.
The information, if you observe, is different. It could be because there's a political shift somewhere. It could be because it's really cold, or there's a hot snap, or there could be a whole range of different things. There could be a death in the family. It could be anything. That observational intelligence, the emotional understanding of it, really, what does it come down to? Behavior.
Yeah.
So if you can observe behavior, not only that of around you and outside of you, but observe your own behavior, which is probably humans' blind spots.
Yeah.
Because we
Yes,
just
yeah.
have this perpetual
Yeah.
motion, and
You play to your strengths. You kind of bury your weaknesses.
We don't
You have
see
a
it.
way of behaving, of communicating, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see ourselves age.
Yeah.
But even from a fashion perspective, or any behavior perspective, I mean, if you're out there night clubbing at the age we are, and no revealing ages, but we probably wouldn't be out on the lash every single night,
For sure.
clubbing like lunatics.
Yeah.
But at a particular age, there are completely different behaviors which are described. And then there's the cultural aspects.
Yeah.
The human element of really thinking, well, what does experience tell you? AI reminding you of things and instructing AI to make observational and emotional intelligence questions and information gathering on scale, whilst retaining specificity, could lead to something quite remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially given the value context potentially changing.
Big time.
Because that's the question, do you care about this? If you ask a question, do you care about your shoes, at different times of day or night, at different points of the year, you will probably give numerous different answers depending on the context around you. That, as advertising and even fulfillment, I mean, it is that seeping of all elements of business, merging into what are we trying to achieve, and what are all the objective states.
Big time. And then where will you still need humans to fine-tune the model, and where can the model fine-tune itself?
Well, that's creativity and innovation in a way.
Oh, big time. Yeah, yeah. If I think about, if you take a step back and think about education, what should we be teaching people? And, obviously people in education are probably at least a few years away from a job. What work will be left in a few years' time? In my mind, it's imagining new things, designing new things, building new things, fixing old things, storytelling around all the things going on, empathy. I'm kind of starting to run out of ideas, but they're the kind of things. And so that's what I think humans should be focused on, is what education should be focused on. It's like ultimately they're the things that will make us employable and make our lives richer, and probably also make sure we get the most out of technology and control the technology too.
Well, storytelling is a huge element. If we look back to the caveman days, even if we look at our political voting, why vote for one thing over another ideology? look at everything, and
Religion, I mean, it's still storytelling, really. So,
it,
yeah, it's yeah,
everything is.
yeah,
Politics is,
yeah.
religion is,
Branding, clearly.
fashion
Yeah, yeah,
fashion is.
yeah.
It's all to kind of describe the
Big
story.
time.
You know, the
Yeah.
mods of the rockers.
Hmm.
You could look at all of it.
Yeah,
The soundtrack to it is describing little universes
yeah, big time.
that it may resonate with us,
Yeah,
and we may relate to.
yeah,
You know, even, you know, sport,
yeah.
a similar sort of
Agreed.
thing.
Yeah.
So, how do you see the next 3 years playing out?
I The first thing to say, obviously, we're talking a lot about AI here, but just the world, I think, is more. There's more risk than there has been in most people's lifetimes who are alive now. Probably since the Second World War or something like that. So, we've got clearly geopolitical risk. The world order led by the US is kind of fragmenting. We've got supply chain risks, so partly linked to that, tariffs and all the other things that go with it. But when there's geopolitical risk, there's supply chain risk. And given the world has built a fully integrated supply chain, that's having to reconfigure. There's tactical political risk. There's democracy is at risk almost everywhere. There's national bankruptcy risk. Like a lot of democracies have effectively run the finances so close to bankruptcy, there'll probably be some national bankruptcies. And then clearly there's AI on top of that, which is like an amplifier of everything, because
Mm.
it's capable of so much. So I think one of the key things when I look at it is no one really knows where the world is in 3 years' time, let alone 5 or 10. So what I think a lot of us, whether that's companies or individuals, will do is say, how do I build an operating system for myself or for my company that can keep adapting and winning and thriving in a world where a whole load of things can change? So if you start at the organizational levels, I think it's going to be massive flexibility. You can't set things in stone. You can't have a 3-year plan and say that won't change. If you ever could, but you definitely can't now. You can't have an org structure and say, that won't change. Everything will need to be adaptable, which in general for companies will mean a smaller core headcount, core business, whatever, with way more optionality. So, testing things, if they work well, scale it up fast. If they don't work well, shut it down fast. As individuals, we need to also build massive flexibility in ourselves, which means make sure our skills stay up to date. Don't learn at the pace your company teaches you. That's almost certainly too slow. Learn at the pace that you need to stay ahead in society, which is faster. To have multiple income streams. So if you lose one, you've got others. To build a personal brand, to build a network, to build probably an AI assistant, so that effectively you are well-known, well-networked, have enormous value to add to society, and a mechanism of constantly evolving your value to society.
To the portfolio approach.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's where I think we all need to be thinking now. Clearly, it would be lovely to say in 10 years' time I see X. But the issue, and especially if you, I'm sure you do, but you go online and listen to the experts. Some people will say in 10 years' time we will have cured cancer, worked out how to make energy ridiculously cheaply, blah, 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 blah. Humans will be basically having picnics and, exercising, because most of the hard work is going to be done by AI. And there are others who will say we will all be kept alive in pods on a drip, living a virtual world, and, basically being controlled by the machines. I'm more inclined to believe the optimistic story. I think reality will muddle through. I do think humans are incredibly inventive, and very few want to live on a universal basic income. And so therefore we will keep inventing new ways to add value, new ways to make money, new ways to interact with other humans. It's a bit like, almost every technological innovation or breakthrough in society over the last few hundred years, humans have found a new and typically better way to live and work. The issue with the next few years is the changes will happen faster than they've ever happened before by a long way. So are people adaptable enough to get through the changes with minimal pain? And that's my big open question. Yeah.
In many ways, it's going to become equally both more obvious and less obvious, as in masked and hidden,
Yeah.
of the what an individual is going to be capable of. An
Yeah.
individual, then, in the context of an organization,
Yeah.
so both private life and
Yeah.
business life. And if you look at how humans operate, always have done,
Hmm.
irrespective of the times. I mean, think of World
Yeah.
War II time, um, peacetime.
Hmm.
Those who look at something and say, "Oh, I will do it because it is difficult,"
Hmm.
like the JFK
Yes. Yeah.
speech.
Yeah.
We'll do it not because it's easy, but because it
Yeah.
is hard. And you look at fitness.
Hmm.
You're into your fitness. If you keep that up,
Hmm.
if you exercise, if
Yeah.
you build resilience, if you build strength,
Hmm.
then if you can be smart enough to observe what is around
Yeah.
you and say, the opportunity is here, I
Yeah.
must do this, whether you want to or whether you don't really want
Yeah.
to, a lot of the time, to succeed is to do the things that you find uncomfortable
Yes.
and would
Correct.
prefer not to do,
Yeah.
but you know that you must.
100%.
And that's where it's going to be obvious because people will be capable so
Hmm.
rapidly and so quickly. Even we talked about before, the job of the CEO,
Yeah.
the fact it's almost unrecognizable on a 3 month
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
It changes so much.
Big time. Yeah.
And it gives a view into that because
Yeah.
that's a really interesting point that I've not heard anyone talk about before.
On the role of the CEO. So I'll start take a step back as I'm asking a lot of people like career advice on what do I do, and in particular, I think people are getting a lot of let's say sympathy in the press right now because they're having a hard time as fresh grads. You know, they come out of university, racked up a lot of debts, and come out, and most of the graduate trainee jobs are gone or going, etc. And it's hard, but well, one of the reasons that they're going is with AI, the doing part of work is rapidly disappearing. So everyone needs to be a leader. Now, in my mind, the future graduate trainee jobs are managing an army of bots. You know, whether it's 2 or 10, you'll be managing a team of AIs, and your job is to work out what's the company strategy, what's my role in that, what's the task I need to get done, what brief do I give to each bit of AI, to each of my bot team or whatever, how do I coordinate all of that work, how do I pull it back together, make sure it delivers something valuable, how do I storytell, etc., that goes with it. And people coming out of university don't have those skills. But in essence, what I've said to people, whether it's especially in those early careers, is I think probably the most future-proof job description or job title right now is product manager. Because as a product manager, first of all, most companies have a lot of product managers because they're critical to success. You're building a product, whatever that might be. But as a product manager, you really are having to touch so many things. It's hard for AI to do it. You really need to either understand or possibly shape company strategy. You have to totally write product strategy. You have to work out your competitor analysis. You have to really deeply empathize with your customers and potential customers about their pain points and how to solve them. You have to work with all the other stakeholders in the organization to build something, deliver something, market something, make it work, and improve it. So it's critical. But then over time, potentially some of that gets commoditized. But it's not impossible one day to have a scenario where all work gets one way or another massively shrunk, and done by AI or robots, to the point where the only jobs left are CEO.
Hmm.
Now, that might be 20 years out. This is, a very futuristic thinking, but arguably the only job you might need is to say, what is the purpose of my company? What are we building? Who are our customers? So that product manager job becomes the CEO job because, finance is automated, HR, you don't need it because you don't have employees. Engineering, you don't need because AI writes the code. Marketing, you don't need it because it's automated. You end up with one role. And so I think if you believe anything like that for anyone in the workforce, you need to be able to learn to think like a CEO.
I
You
mean,
need to really think, well, what is the total business? What problems am I going to solve in society, and how do I do that?
what skill sets would you say, if you were to describe a human
Hmm.
with abilities,
Yeah.
what skills would they be?
So I think it's a mixture of skill sets and attitude. So the skill sets would be the obvious ones, like very curious about the world, like where is the world headed? What problems does that create? Where is the supply demand imbalances? You want to solve problems that less people are solving. It's better to have less competition. There's always the kind of work ethic. You need to apply yourself and apply yourself pretty hard. There'll be the ability to, quite frankly, still network. It might sound very old-fashioned, but the ability to surround yourself with smart people and AI, and work out who are my advisors. And again, it will be humans plus AI, but it can't be one or the other. It definitely needs to be both. Um, there will be some of those skills I talked about, like the storytelling, the ability to imagine a better way of doing things, design it, build it, fix it, keep improving it, storytell, etc. that goes with it. So I think that's the core skill sets. But then there's also a mindset which is being obsessed with problem solving. I think ultimately, and you could argue this is what companies do now, but if everyone's going to be a CEO one day, the key thing you need to say is look at the world and say, what problem am I solving, and how will I do it different or better than anyone else? And if you can do that, if you can think that through, define it, and then deliver on that, you have added value to society. There's almost certainly money to be made, and then you just need to work out the right monetization strategy.
So it's effectively being, in partial nerd terms, an inquisitive supernode.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, interesting. So, looking at some of those points and applying that to yourself,
Yeah,
it would be good to traverse. I'm
Mhm.
thinking like a graph
yeah.
at the moment. To traverse over to Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
What have you seen about how they look at things?
Mm.
Where's the investment going?
Yeah.
And what's the general temperature, given that's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
thing that you're doing?
Yeah. As I'm sure you're aware, and listeners will be aware, AI is the hot subject. It's not the only subject, but sometimes it's easy to believe that. So there's clearly a core element in Silicon Valley of we want to build something amazing with AI, because otherwise, quite frankly, our valuation goes through the floor, our value add to society goes down, employees leave, and we've got no business. So AI is the hot subject. There are a few others, but that's the hottest of them all. But then when you say, well, where are they investing? It's not just building those, the LLMs, the large language models that kind of solve problems. There's different things as well. So I start with the really biggest companies, especially the ones that are ad supported, which I know the best, the Googles, the Meta of the world, even Amazon these days. One of the things to realize is if we want to get to that point of personalized two-way communication, literally being able to chat to any consumer on the planet, get to know them well, and sell them something, that requires actually three things. The first is really good AI that can have a conversation and personalize communication, whether it's chatbots, videos, ads, whatever, for each individual on the planet at a specific point in time, with a specific brand. That's obviously pretty powerful. But the second thing is you need massive data sets. So you need to gather more and better data about each individual and their relationship with each brand. Because if you can do the personalization, you don't have the data, you still can't do the personalization. You need the insights that power it. And then the third thing is the compute power. This is why there's whatever it is, $1 trillion a year or something crazy being invested in basically GPUs, TPUs, but processing power, and then the power supply that goes with that to be able to generate gazillions of interactions with consumers or with users per day. So if you just think about advertising, let's say 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, many brands would make one ad for 100 million people. Now, in a perfect world, that same brand would now make 100 million ads for 100 million people. So think about the orders of magnitude of processing power that you need for that. And this is why, and I'm a few weeks out of date, so it's probably changed, but I think our power consumption for the world is going to something like triple because of AI over the next, I think, decade. Fact check that, but there's those kinds of scales. It's insane. So then I think the other thing, which maybe won't be the Silicon Valley companies investing, but will be smart financial investors, is looking at how do we provide the power and the infrastructure to the Silicon Valley companies. Because the way we produce power and do it in a way that doesn't destroy the planet is going to be insanely important too. So those seem to be the really big things going on, is the actual the AI that does personalization, and obviously I'm talking ads, but the personalization could be for medical advice, it could be for education, it could be for all sorts of roles, but it's personalized support from AI. Then it's deep data sets. There's a lot of talk that LLMs are easier to build than data sets, so that the winners of the future may all be the ones with the best and most original data, as opposed to the LLMs. But then I think the thing that will probably control the speed of rollout is the compute power, the ability to actually process what the technology is capable of doing.
Is there not another way of looking at it? I mean, you can humor me
Yeah,
with
yeah. No,
this
I love
a
this.
little
Yeah.
bit. So, in effect, if you think the amount of data created, it used to be effectively doubling
Hmm.
every 18
Yeah.
months. God knows what it is now. But also you've got the creation of synthetic data. So you've
Hmm.
got the quality of data
Hmm.
from a trusted and
Hmm.
true basis. You've also got the applicability of that data to the individual.
Hmm.
That's where the
Hmm.
values can be extracted.
Yeah.
Then if we look at the history of technology from a hardware
Hmm.
perspective, so different to software, and we see that the ability goes up
Mm.
and the power consumption goes down.
Right. Yeah.
So how far are we away from the various different trajectories
Yeah.
hitting a point where in effect we'll be able to do a lot more? But then if we're looking at the individual nature of the value of the data
Hmm.
from a
Yeah.
personalized perspective, then a distributed compute to the individual, because you're talking about data sovereignty and the
Hmm.
control,
Hmm.
the origination of that
Yeah.
data, then it would be more of a distributed compute capability,
Hmm.
which takes away from the expected demand based on a linear type of thinking, and then the origination of that data distilling within a
Hmm.
private domain on the
Hmm.
individual's device into a thin sliver across the cloud. So the
Hmm.
cloud is utilized for its maximum
Yeah.
effect, solves the problem of massive energy requirement
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's distributing that by distributing the
Hmm.
compute and increasing the quality
Yeah.
of the data. So actually, AI can then
Yeah.
maybe communicate with other AI,
Yeah.
and we not necessarily in the way agentic is
Hmm.
understood as such,
Yeah.
but individual and hive mind
Yeah.
distributed AI capabilities, which are also generating an element of synthetic, but are personalized yet generalized, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to purely generalized, trying to extrapolate not necessarily trusted data. Because if
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
massive amounts of synthetic data is created via
Yeah.
LLMs, then it is by de facto not necessarily valuable in the
Yes.
same
Yeah.
way. The other point to that is the approach of needing massive, massive, massive amounts of data.
Mm-hmm.
If you're putting huge amounts of data in,
Yeah.
then the computational cost, the GPU cost
Mm-hmm.
of understanding what you put in the first place
Mm-hmm.
to extrapolate any value
Yeah.
is exponentially large.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a problem. It doesn't incur the computational cost, the massive overheads, and
Mm-hmm.
the energy if you understand from source where the data comes from
Yeah.
and its authenticity.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're not creating the problem, which is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
expensive
Yeah.
to solve. And it's just think,
Yeah. So and there's a lot of points and thoughts in there. I guess so. Certainly, if I paraphrase that, would the world be better off simplistically with all the data about me stored on in one place, i.e. my device or whatever, and then everyone else tap into that with my permission, and that way you don't need to have thousands or millions of companies all trying to work out who I am, and straight away that creates a more authentic data set and less data captured required, therefore less processing power all over the place,
mm.
and probably less people trying to hijack my my
and,
data and other stuff too.
and also the interactivity of at the moment, if you leverage like
Mm.
Sora
Yeah.
or any number of the systems,
Hmm.
it's a server-side compute.
Yeah.
So that overhead, I mean, there's the problem that OpenAI have,
Hmm.
where when they take on a customer, they lose more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's their business, it's their model.
Yeah.
No
May or may not be sustainable for a while.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can let people come to their own
Yeah.
conclusions. But if you had real-time, highly
Hmm.
capable models
Yeah.
which were so efficient that they could run on device,
Hmm.
still the value from an advertising, marketing, communication standpoint is still there.
Yeah.
But in the same way that on my iPhone, well, the phone, most of the capabilities are actually operating here.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a monster amount of
Hmm. Yeah.
cloud-based, well,
Yeah.
server-based
Yeah.
compute required. So distributing that to the
Hmm.
individuals on scale.
Yeah. So I think It sounds really good. Like, would I personally like it as an individual to have my data controlled by me all in one place, and then I can actually check it and say, yeah, companies have access to that, not that, only that company have access to that, and yes, that's all true. I think it'll take a few things. Number one is there's probably way more data about us out there than we would want to keep an eye on, if you know what I mean. It's like, so there is an element
Yeah.
of I can check 50 data points and say, yep, the market can have that. What if they need 5,000 and there may be 5,000? I guess the bigger question is who would build this infrastructure? Like governments would mess it up. So then you're talking companies, but by nature they are profit-making organizations. And then even if you said which companies, probably only Google or maybe Microsoft could do that right now. And although I think, of all the big tech companies, Google is a well-run and ethical company, do we want to give them that much power that they become the only source of data on us? So I would guess,
Well, I think
yeah.
the interesting thing is this is what's fantastic about this world of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at your portfolio
Mm-hmm.
approach, you look at individual innovation,
Mm-hmm.
all the innovation which has changed the world was in similar circumstances
Mm-hmm.
where the massive incumbents thought they had it covered,
Yeah.
and people were told, but you can't do that
Mm-hmm.
because the challenges would be so big.
Yeah.
That's the question to answer.
Yep.
That's where innovation, that's where
Yeah.
the HP guys in their garage go, we're going to do this differently.
Yeah.
In
Yeah. Yeah.
many
Yeah.
ways,
Yeah.
the you could take, potentially some experience from the military
Mm-hmm.
time
Yeah.
and another part of
Yeah.
your life. Speak with someone who's a music producer,
Yeah.
speak with someone in a random different walk of life and
Mm-hmm.
say, actually, my experience in this particular thing, which appears non-related,
Mm-hmm.
you may see and go, I can think
Yeah.
of this problem a bit differently.
Yeah.
And it's the aggregation of the different
It
thinking in
is
the
interesting.
minds to then think, actually, we've solved the problem that we were told couldn't be done because we've not
Yeah.
really discussed that it could be done a
Yeah.
different way, because there's all the assumptions. And when you really break down the assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at this more like the software approach, that you can create the efficiency, and all
Mm-hmm.
history tells us that that will probabilistically
Absolutely. Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
if we think in our own narrative as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the structured
Yeah.
narrative, which
It's fascinating. I'm laughing on the inside because just in my mind, I've got this picture of GCHQ or ex-GCHQ people saying, we're good at gathering data on people. Yeah, we could build the software. And on the one hand, I think, actually, that could happen. On the other, it's like, would society trust a bunch of ex-spies to keep the data on us? But anyway, but your point is a good one. It's like, is there a time for a paradigm shift? And certainly, I think the world would be a better place if in a world where we all controlled our own data and it was stored in one place that we had sign off and control over it. I think I also made a point, which is it might make actually all the world need less processing power and other stuff because not everyone's trying to gather data. It's gathered in one place in an efficient manner. So anyway,
but
I'll get my thinking cap on.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's all or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing about life,
Yeah.
right? You can wear smart stuff and you can wear a three-piece suit,
Yeah.
or you can wear shorts and running shoes.
Totally.
The same person can have different
Yeah.
approaches.
Yeah.
If you go back to the values, what do you value?
Mm-hmm.
Well, your banking.
Yeah.
Your banking, well, you're not going to hold all the data. The bank is. That's
Yeah.
its
Yeah.
function.
Yeah.
Other things which you may find really important and really personal, maybe you want the completely private model and
Yeah.
you'll
Yeah.
undertake things
Mm-hmm.
in that way. Other ones, you actually want to engage in a wider cloud-based
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm.
It's having the choice.
Yes.
And I think at the moment we're told there's only one choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anytime we're told there's only one choice, the nature of the human being is we're going to find a
I
different
don't
way.
like that. I want more choice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that this is the whole point of cybersecurity in many ways. Cybersecurity is constantly, we're sorted. We've solved every single form of attack.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Until
it's
the
cat
next
and
one.
mouse. It's cat and mouse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we look at it that way,
Yeah.
I mean, life does get very interesting
Yeah, it
very
does.
quickly.
Yeah. Very much so.
So, okay, what's the last thing that is worth covering?
Oh, and there's so much going on. I think one of the things I get a lot of questions on is, how do I just future-proof my own career? Because the world's changing so fast. I think, you know, most people, if they're in a full-time job, are pretty worried for all the stuff we just discussed. It's like at some stage, will AI either make redundant, or not just AI, all the changes in the world, changes in politics, changes in supply chain, changes in government, whatever might be, plus AI. Um, and the other thing is, how do I get started is the other thing. It's all very easy to say theoretically, yeah, I'll just find other revenue sources, but they don't just turn up and knock on your door and say, hey, here's another revenue source. So I think what I say to a lot of people in their career is, you definitely, it comes back to some of what we discussed earlier, need to look at least a few years ahead and say, what are the problems the world will be trying to solve in 2-3 years? If you can think 5, well done. I think 2 or 3 is enough. But what are the kind of problems? And also, what's the kind of work I do now that will get commoditized, and therefore I do need to be aware that that's going away at some stage. And then think through, well, how do I solve that problem or problems? How do I get closer to it? And the answer might be, right now, I don't know, but you can work it out. Start getting to understand the problem better, thinking through ways to solve it, hanging out with other people trying to solve the same problem and starting to collaborate on stuff, whether it's collaborate on a startup or a project or a white paper or whatever it might be. And then in parallel, just build your optionality. And optionality in careers comes from things like going out and helping as many people as possible. And the more people you help, the more likely one of them is to at some stage say, have you got more time? Can I hire you? Do you want to start a company together? Whatever it might be. And then it's to build your personal brand so that people know you exist, and sometimes give you a call. You get random calls from strangers because you've just let the world know who you are, through building a decent online presence and a little bit of a personal brand. And it doesn't mean everyone has to be an influencer. It just means you need to clearly articulate who you are, what problems you'd like to solve, what your credibility is. Do it clearly online, do it clearly when you meet people, demonstrate it with as many people as possible, just going out and being helpful. And then good things start happening.
Excellent. I think that's fantastic advice. Where can people find you?
Just Google Ben Legg, BenLegg, and you'll find me on LinkedIn or online. I'm pretty visible.
Excellent. Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.